In the past, a good leader takes conflicting sides and brings
Mm.
them together, bridges the gap. Today, it becomes even harder and at times impossible. I talked about Ukraine. Now we've got the Middle East, right? In ways that would not have been possible before. And that war in the Middle East is what's happening in Gaza is now polarizing generations. The older generation, I mean, let's talk about the United States alone. There's
Right.
a gap between the older generation and Generation Z, which is seeing both real violence on social media, but also propaganda on all sides. And our emotions are being
Mm.
played. And frankly, I mean, we should be stopping when South Africa asked for, you know, an end to the violence, because you're talking about almost 30,000 people killed. How can we stand by and watch all of this? And let me not go into Gaza now, right? But like,
Right.
so the second thing that you mentioned is colonization, and that this is a little bit easier to deal with, because in the end, these algorithms, the code that is now ruling the world, was created in Silicon Valley and in China. So these are the two, but it originally was the United States. And then who did the work, the content moderation to clean up the machine? That came from the global south. That came from the Philippines, from India, from
Yeah.
Indonesia, from Africa, right? Like, so we've been, this is Christopher Wiley who really said that colonialism never died, it just moved online. And then the
Yeah.
harder part here is that the very workers who now have to actually be exposed to the violence, but two,
Mm.
who clean up the large language models for the global north are coming from the global south. So we're twice
Yeah.
colonized. It's an
Yeah.
information ecosystem that we need to fix. And what's the hope? That's your question. The hope is that governments, democratic governments, wake up before it's too late. I laugh when I say this, but the EU, the European Union, has won the race of the turtles, and it has put in place um, the Digital Services Act, which kicked in. It's fully implemented last Friday. I was at the Munich Security Conference when that happened, right? So all of those measures are in place, but even as that kicked in, the big tech companies then they didn't address these issues. What they did is they leapfrogged to large language
Mm.
models, right? So I think that's our problem is that you need to protect people, whether it's the Better Business Bureau in the United States or whether it was FDR's New Deal, right? The governments actually need to clean up the public sphere. And the difficulty in this is that the big tech companies argue that they stand for free speech, when in the end that is a lie, because free speech is being used to stifle free speech. When you have an attack coming at you
Mm.
and saying a lie a million times on social media, it becomes a fact. And this is
Yeah.
the problem of the breakup of our shared reality.
Well, it's really not free speech. It's paid speech at the rate that you're susceptible to this clickbait, syndrome.
And what does that do? There's a degradation of journalism, right? Like
Right.
the incentive structure is upside down. Good journalism, it's actually ranged against good journalism. So you have, uh, several things happening at the same time. The business model of journalism is dead. This is advertising. It The ROI is cheaper if you go to micro targeting, and yet that is manipulative and killing information you need. So the first is the business model is dead. The second is that news is distributed on the same social media platforms. The world's largest distributor of news up till last year was Meta, was Facebook. And last year they began choking traffic to news organizations. This is a problem with all the elections coming up. So instead of fixing the design of the platform, they just decided to take away news, means we on these platforms are more susceptible to disinformation, to getting lies spread to us, right? By design. And then I think the last part is if you're degrading or commodifying news, then what happens? How are you going to get your information? Because even with large language models, with generative AI, no one is going to be able to tell you exactly what's happening at this moment in time except real people, journalists. And if that doesn't survive, then it's a hop, skip, and a jump to the destruction of journalism as well. Because the journalists, our standards ethics should push us. We try to hold power to account, not always successfully, right? Because
Right.
some of our countries in Southeast Asia where corruption is endemic, it flows into every part of society, including to journalism. But right now, it is this tipping point moment where we need to help it survive. So last thing on this is that in 2019 I decided to stop being a punching bag and then to
Mm.
try to do something about this. So we created something called the International Fund for Public Interest Media. It is to go to governments that have overseas ODAs, overseas development assistance funds, and we pointed out to them that 0.3% of ODAs go for independent media. If we can just raise that to 1%, that would become $1 trillion a year. So
Wow.
in the first year, we raised maybe $50 million, and we've now started giving out the grants, particularly for the Global South, to help independent media survive this time period. That's not a cure for everything because we still have to do so much more. But the other part is governance. I feel sorry for anyone in government today who doesn't want to lie, who doesn't want to incite fear, anger, or hate. It is difficult. And I think, there's a reason again why the kleptocrats are coming together globally and changing our world for the worst. I don't want us to lose our faith in humanity because
Mm.
the incentive structure of the distribution of information is the worst of humanity. It triggers the worst of who we are. But in the end, I've seen so much good in the worst of times,
Yeah.
right? So we have to find our way back to that.